I've never been on a presentation where somebody just talked about just in high level vision for a product and shared this with so many different people within the organization.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the State of Cloud address. I'm EJ Rogers, Product Marketing Manager for Tangoe Cloud. You know, the number one question I get is, what is going on with cloud? Well, today, our new VP of Product for Tangoe Cloud, Dino Dojan, will be on hand to share his ideas for Tangoe Cloud.
Good morning, Tangaroos. Welcome to State of Cloud. To give you an idea at the onset as to what this actually is, it's the mythical stage of any endeavor called planning. It's the thing we're supposed to be doing, but seldom end up doing, certainly not thoroughly. And the way I like to plan things is to articulate them to myself first, get right with myself in detail, or as detailed as I can make it, in terms of distinct, discrete tasks that need to happen in order for us to get where we need to be, and that is to lead in cloud. And so, if you ever wanted to hear somebody ramble on rather subconsciously about how we know what we want to do, we know we want to lead in cloud, we know who's on the team, we know a lot of stuff. What we need to figure out is the how in detail. And this is my attempt to precognize, to predict, to provide the how. And the how is based on several frameworks, cognitive frameworks. Apologies for the sirens in the back. I'm at 285 Madison, and New York City has a tendency to be a little bit noisy at times. Apologies. I started 4 weeks ago, and it became apparent that there is a lot of interest and enthusiasm around cloud. I thought I was joining a sleepy little corporate experiment. Instead, what I had uncovered in the last 4 weeks is something closer resembling a juggernaut. I was told that I'd have 2 direct reports. I thought to myself, that's manageable. On my first day, EJ walked in and said, I want to be your product marketing manager. I said, word. She said, word. She then made it happen. We're still in the process of making it happen fully, but well on our way. So immediately my team grew to 3. A couple of weeks later, I find out from Yakov's very official-looking spreadsheet that there are in fact 10 resources, 10 people working on cloud. Not full-time, but enough to give you a heart attack. What are all these people doing? I, as a person who is supposed to know, I couldn't answer that question. They're not doing it full-time. There's innumerable others who seem to be spending significant amount of their energy and they're working tirelessly on something that is not their main project. Jason, Ed, Ron, Jill, Ivan, Marina, Bob, the UX Jason, and his team, Mary Jo. So many people are excited about cloud and going above and beyond. My team, Paolo, EJ, and Shireen, have been doing their regular jobs and educating their new boss. on everything that's happening with cloud. So I thought that these first 4 weeks was a good time to pause, make the time stop, and take stock of current affairs. Um, give you a bit of insight of what I found, give you some information about what we are thinking in the present tense, and cast our gaze towards the future a little bit and see what's coming down the pike, so to speak. This is a weird kind of presentation. It wasn't intended as a presentation at all. It was more intended as a thinking out loud session, something that I planned on doing by myself, for myself. But I figured, hey, let's open it up so that others who are clearly curious and want to know what's going on with cloud, they can tune in if they want to and sort of get the first shooter experience of someone going through the planning phase of the plan. There's already been a round table phase, when everybody gets together and figures out what to do. Up and down the hierarchy that has happened. And this is my attempt to sort of bring it all together into a singular cohesive structure, or as close to it as I can make it. Today, this is very much an iterative process. And just articulate it in some way. And the reason I want to do that is because I believe this quote is on the money. Future can't go where language hasn't been. My first 6 months at Tangoe, I've dubbed them Project Phoenix. We are rising from the ashes. Project Phoenix is just a label that I've given my activities for the first 6 months. When I first met Bob, one of the things he told me, he said, Dino, I've been a CEO at 4 companies and I've tried everything. And I found that only one thing makes a difference: culture. And I found Bob and the rest of the company to live and breathe their words. I'll just give you one example that all of us are aware of. We have a podcast that asks exactly that question: what is culture? It's a great thing that we do. It's a great content that we're producing and putting out into the world. It's an important question. But in terms of the ROI, it's hard to connect podcasts to ROI. Content in general is notoriously difficult to quantify the ROI on it. And so it is one of those things where Bob says, I think culture is important. And then he does things that prove that that's what he thinks. A refreshing change of pace from a CEO, if you ask me. So culture is very important in what I hope to do. And it's like, how do you develop the culture is the question. And the correct answer is you don't, it emerges. The culture emerges. But that doesn't mean that we can't tinker, It doesn't mean we can't feed. What's that old saying? The wolf that grows is the one you feed. So we can tinker with our culture. And if I have my druthers, what's going to emerge is a culture of innovation. And I should point out how I mean innovation, because innovation is a slippery slope and a bit of a trope. Is that a rhyme? That's a rhyme. There are technological innovations, um, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, blockchain. Um, Maybe a few years ago, drones were innovative to some extent, still are, to a great extent. Um, Bitcoin, there's a whole host of technologies and companies who can rightfully claim innovation in the technical space. That's not us. Um, that's not the game we're playing. That's not our strong suit. Our strong suit is expense management. And like I said, we have over 50 patents in expense management. Um, we know expense management. Um, so um, the innovation that I would like to engineer is process innovation. And that's really what we're going to be talking about. Process innovation, process engineering. And the incision point where we're attempting to inject a dose of innovation into Tangoe is inside cloud. It's obvious to any casual observer that a corporation is a corporation. It's steeped in policies and red tape, etc. Tangoe less than most. In fact, I used to work for Accenture. I mean, talk about steeped in policies and processes, etc. That really grind the productivity gears to a halt. And this is a foundational first principle that I start from. All companies produce the same thing, inefficiencies. And then maybe they produce their products. And the reason the inefficiencies are so pervasive is because not necessarily people are lazy, although we tend to be lazy, sure, but it's clarity that kills productivity. And then, of course, the other thing that kills productivity is obstacles that get in our way, and these are the policies, etc. So my background is in startups, particularly startup accelerators. And prior to working at a startup incubator, accelerator, those are just words that basically mean, hey, how do we get a group of people with some software from 0 to 1, where the customer of theirs has a path of purchase. Their credit card can be entered somewhere that ends up in the startup's bank account. That's what we need to accomplish. And incubator, accelerator, just the differences in sort of how compressed the timeline ends up being. Prior to that, I had my own startup. My co-founder and I built it in 2011. We ran it for 5 years. We had an exit in 2015, and that was all good. And so I was brought in to inject a bit of this startup culture, let's say, and these startup frameworks, which the frameworks that I'm going to show you are not my frameworks. These are not invented best practices by me. They are best practices that have been war tested. They are the best practices that have emerged out of Silicon Valley and Silicon Alley, for that matter. Well, and startup space, broadly speaking. And so this will be a bit of an introduction to all of that, to the extent that you're interested in it. And I'm going to talk about how we're going to apply these frameworks to our process. And when I say our process, in this case, I'm talking about cloud proper. The corporate memory of Tangoe is still reeling from being delisted on stock exchange about 2 years ago. It has taken us this much time to sort of get the legs under us. And we are now ready to lift off in a big way. So hence Project Phoenix. The task before us is huge. Once again, I have to call upon Bob, and I will often in this presentation. He said that only 5% of the companies that have attempted to enter, and I'm putting this in bunny ear quotes, the third space have succeeded. 5% of the companies who have attempted to enter the third space have succeeded. So odds are against us. Of course, the three spaces that we're in is fixed, mobile, and cloud. We dominate fixed. We are the leaders, the innovators. We have over 50 patents in fixed. We have invented and dominated this space pretty much since the beginning. Mobile, with the acquisition of Mobi, and that team just kicking ass, we are pretty well set in mobile. And so can we successfully become a de facto standard for cloud expense management? Bringing me into a mid-sized corporate giant, I have about 10 years of startup experience. Clearly, and I wear it on my sleeve, clearly Bob wanted to infuse a bit of the startup culture into our corporate milieu. What culture is going to emerge at Tangoe remains to be seen. The culture I would like to see emerge is a culture of innovation. Like I said, Tango's corporate memory is reeling from being delisted on stock exchange. What got us here won't keep us here. For us, innovation is not platitude. It's not a tired phrase. It's not a worn out concept. It's an imperative. If we don't figure out what to do with cloud, and this has been made clear to me in no uncertain terms by literally everyone, the future of Tangoe is at stake. So we have to do good. So innovation is what I'm going to focus the cloud on. We want to run in tight innovation sprints, and I'll talk more about what I mean by that. But my first three sort of objectives is to nail the culture, the innovation practice, and become a good coworker to my team. Get competent on all the corporate vagaries of Tangoe, and our way of delivering products, etc. So that gives you a very sort of a 10,000-foot view of what I'm thinking. You might have questions throughout this presentation. Why? Why are we doing this? Why is this important? It's important because the job requirements are such that it demands certain things. So I mentioned earlier that our corporate memory is still reeling from being delisted on stock exchange. And we have this distinct, more real than most notion that what got us here won't keep us here. We have proof of that. And so then the question becomes, we can't continue business as usual, then what do we do? And we could do worse than applying some process innovation to a part of our product suite, in this case, cloud. And in case you're wondering what VP of Cloud does, I'll talk about that. I'll talk about Bob frameworks as well. He's got some brilliant stuff that he has shared with myself, with Ivan, and Ivan has shared with me, and I've amalgamated that into a singular graphic that I will discuss at length. I'll talk about the 13-month year that the cloud team is going to use. This has no impact on anyone or anything else. There is no 13-month year calendar in Outlook that I know of. This is strictly a sort of a cognitive framework that I've been using because Julian calendar is engineered bananas. I'll talk about that 13-month year. It's something that I've been using for years now since I discovered it, and it's the one that allows us to create a somewhat controlled environment and thus approach this somewhat scientifically. There's a still huge sort of a art component to it, but we also want to be quantitative. The innovation practice that we've adopted has come from Gartner. I should rephrase that. Didn't come from Gartner. It has been popularized and amalgamated by Gartner and used by pretty much everyone who does anything related to innovation, design thinking, lean startups, customer development, UX development, prototyping, and the list goes on. So we've adopted the Gartner framework for our purposes. We're going to talk about Scrum of Scrums. As you may or may not know, Scrum is a project management, time management strategy, usually on weekly or bi-weekly basis, monthly basis. Scrum of Scrums is taking multiple teams running on differing time schedules and locking them into a mechanism, calendaring mechanism. And because Scrum of Scrums is burdensome to say, especially if you're saying it a lot, we'll just call it gears. If you're wondering what the P in VP of Cloud means, the P is squared, and it's really product, people, or process, I should say, and pipeline. And so we'll talk about product, in other words, the roadmap, the process, in other words, the process engineering that needs to take place in order for us to engage in innovative practices. And then finally, pipeline. Actually, firstly, pipeline. And then I'll talk about the 3 goals, 3 metrics, the only 3 things that matter. And for those of you who are more linear, this is the 7 chapters we're going to cover, and hopefully it won't be dark by the time we get there.